Good evening and welcome to the Channel studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. China's Xi Jinping has been filmed accusing Justin Trudeau of leaking meeting details days after they held talks at the G20 summit in Bali.
Everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate.
In a very rare moment, President Xi told the Canadian Prime Minister via a translator this was inappropriate and accused him of lacking sincerity.
In Canada, we believe in free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have.
Mr. Trudeau responded by saying that in Canada they believe in free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. Before Mr. Trudeau could finish, President Xi said that he first create the conditions, eventually shaking Trudeau's hand and walking away. Ukraine says it has found the bodies of 63 civilians bearing signs of torture near the recently liberated city of Kherson. Russia has repeatedly denied committing atrocities in its invasion, but evidence is mounting of torture and civilian murder. Meanwhile, more strikes have been reported days after one of Russia's most intense bombardments of the war. Here, a strike on a building in Dnipro. Officials say a gas production facility and a missile factory in the city were among the latest targets, and that at least 4 people died in one area. Members of the Kenya Defence Forces have arrived at DRC's Goma airport as fighting between the army and M23 rebels has flared again in the last week. The soldiers are part of the troops of the East Africa Community Regional Force and were seen chanting at the airport. Described by a United Nations Special Envoy as increasingly acting as a conventional army, the M23 have staged a major offensive this year, seizing territory and sparking a diplomatic row between DRC and Rwanda. The UK Chancellor has announced tens of billions of pounds in tax rises and spending cuts in the autumn statement.
Mr. Speaker.
Jeremy Hunt acknowledged the UK is in recession, but says his plan will help rebuild the economy and reduce debt. He announced a freeze in income tax thresholds, which will mean millions of people pay more in tax as their wages rise. Households will also pay more in energy bills from April.
The first difficult decision I take on tax is to reduce the threshold at which the 45p rate becomes payable from £150,000 to £125,140. Those earning £150,000 or more will pay just over £1,200 more in tax every year.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves responded, saying the country was sick of being ripped off by the Tories.
3 Prime Ministers, 4 Chancellors and 4 budgets later. And where do we find ourselves? In a worse place than we started the year. Inflation spiralling, growth plunging, living standards falling. Mr. Speaker, Britain is a great country with fantastic strengths, but because of this government's mistakes, we are being held back. What people will be asking themselves at the next election is this: are me and my family better off with a Conservative government? And the answer is no.
And a life-size statue of the British writer Virginia Woolf has been unveiled in London following a 5-year, £50,000 fundraising campaign. The statue of a smiling wolf sitting on a park bench looking at the River Thames was placed in the city's southwestern suburban district of Richmond, where the writer lived for a decade. Attending the ceremony were the statue's sculptor and 3 descendants of Woolf.
I feel this is a wonderful way to celebrate her time, not only in Richmond, but her life altogether. And I'm very pleased to see that she's been represented in a very natural way. You know, she was a thinker. She was somebody who was interested in people. And I hope that when they come and sit next to her, they'll sense her intelligence and her love of humanity.
It's an amazing honour for me to have been able to be selected to be the sculptor who would do this work. I think most sculptors would have bitten their hand off, somebody's hand off, to be able to do this sculpture, because this author is such an amazing person. And so any female sculptor would have been proud to do it.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. We're starting off in Lisbon, where the Super Eagles of Nigeria have been beaten 4-0 by Portugal in a pre-World Cup friendly for the Euro 2016 champions. Two first-half goals from Bruno Fernandes and second-half strikes from Goncalo Ramos and João Mario gave the Portuguese a comfortable victory in their farewell match before preparing for the World Cup in Qatar. Nottingham Forest striker Emmanuel Dennis missed a penalty for Nigeria in the game played at the Jose Alvalade Stadium. Senegal forward Sadio Mane has been ruled out of this year's FIFA World Cup owing to a leg injury. The African Player of the Year emerged as a doubt for the early stages of the tournament on account of an injury to his right fibula. But Senegal were hopeful that he will be fit for the later stages, but officials have now confirmed he will not be in the squad to Qatar. FIFA has announced that President Gianni Infantino will stand unopposed for a third term as head of World Football Governing Body next year. FIFA said that Mr. Infantino will be the only candidate when the election takes place at the 73rd FIFA Congress in Kigali, Rwanda on March the 16th, 2023.